Hey, what's going on? It's Wayne. How are you? Sorry, I'm a bit sweaty. Just took a run. Want to talk to you about saying no to less than ideal prospects. During the past week, it's Friday, and during the past week, I had two one-on-one clients that I was working with where we, for two different reasons, we talked about this concept of saying no. And in the first case, what the client and I were talking about, what he wanted to know is he's applied some filtering to his prospects. He's applied some kind of criteria that they have to get through in order for him to know he should be working with them. He's done a bunch of analysis of last year's work that he did, and profit and loss and circumstances and the difficulty of the customer and the scenario, how hard he tried to get it versus competition, etc. And so he's come up with this list of criteria, which is great. And now he has the challenge of, how do you say no? Reasonable question, right? And as we talked about it, he said that, in the past, for the most part, what would happen is he might even know on the phone during the first interaction that it probably was less than ideal, but he would go through his whole process, which is rather lengthy and involved and requires energy and time and effort and brain power. You go through that whole thing, and then the way of saying no, you may be familiar with this, it was basically to give them a price so high that if they did go for it, then it would be worth it. Have you ever gotten one of those? Because the reality is, a lot of times, even if you do that, I don't know what it is, like the universe or something is going to punish you because your price wasn't high enough, and it's going to cause you all kinds of turmoil. And then the other thing is, if we're truthful about it, many times we don't really give them a price that's way too high. We end up getting a little bit empathetic, or our competitive spirit kicks in and we want to get the job or whatever, and so we go after it and we end up giving them a lower price that we tell all of our friends we gave a price that was so high, but it's really not true, right? So we talked about that. And then in the second scenario, the reason that this came up was because there was kind of the opposite problem. Because there was no ability or a way to say no to people, it wasn't a possibility, then what would happen was, if the sales team thought that they were a less than ideal prospect, they would kind of let it go and not follow up with them and not really have conversations. And so just the no, definitive no, yes, and ability to say no and go for a no caused some sloppiness in the pipeline, in the sales process. So that's the other scenario. Well, what do you do? Here's what, the first step is, you have to define what makes a good prospect and what makes a bad prospect. So what are some of the questions you can ask to determine who's an ideal fit and a good fit, and also determine who wouldn't be a good fit? So the first thing is, you just have to envision and determine who is the ideal prospect, right? And even write it down and have a scorecard and a sheet and go through and be able to score leads. That's a topic for another day. But you want to know who's good, who's bad first. And then the second thing is, and if you stick around, I'll have a little tool and training to go with this. But the second thing is, you have to tell the prospect in your initial conversation that you might say no. This is true of interviewing too, that you need to be able to tell people, hey, look, I might tell you no. There's just all kinds of times where if we tell people we might tell them no, then we can. If you don't tell people up front in your sales process that you might say no, and then at the end you say, hey, I just don't think we're the right fit for you. Or if you give them a huge number that insults them, it's not going to end well. And in today's world of social media, they may speak poorly of you on the internet. So it's important that we figure out a way to tell them, hey, I might tell you no. And it goes something like this, like, hey, and part of your process could be a short phone call that you do with people. You say, we're going to have a quick conversation today, and I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions, and those questions are going to be designed to help me know whether I can help you and whether I'm the ideal company to help you or not. So at the end, one of two things will happen. Either I'll know that, yes, I can help you, and we'll talk about the next steps so that you can make a good decision, or we'll get to the end and I'm going to know that I'm just not right for you right now, and I'll be able to tell you that. Is that okay? So you need to set the stage. And that does, another good thing is that it allows for the fact that you might say no. It kind of evens up the conversation. And you have to, this is not a technique. There's a place for doing what Sandler Selling calls negative reverse sell. You can look that up and go to their site. There's a place for techniques like that, or negative psychology or whatever. But that's not what this is about. In our heart and in our, integrity in selling, we should not be trying to manipulate it in any way, shape, or form. We're really meaning it like we might say no. So anyway, I hope that helps. If you'd like to know more, I'm going to put this in an email, and I'll put a link. But if you'd like to know more, I'll do a little training with a worksheet that you can use to take prospects through a logical process to determine whether they're a yes or a no during your conversation with them, and also to make sure that if there's a point in the conversation where somebody says something that makes you know you need to actually sell a bit to get them to see themselves as needing your product or service, you'll be able to do that too. So just let me know. Hope that helps. Have a great day. Bye-bye.